Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. Today's video is a bit different. It is part of my Poetry Thursday series. So after this quick intro, I'll be right back and we'll talk about the poem that I'm going to be covering today. For today's poem, I'm taking a break from the horror genre to talk about the song Evermore, performed by Taylor Swift and Bon Iver. The song was written by Justin Diamond, Ederson Vernon, Taylor Swift, and William Bowery, who we now know is Taylor's ex, Joe Alwyn. And Evermore is from the album Evermore, which was released December 11th, 2020. I will be talking somewhat about the poetic devices in the song Evermore, but my main focus is going to be a personal reflection and response to Evermore in relation to how I feel it expresses my experience with major depressive disorder. So the first line, gray November. Initially, as soon as it opens up, that idea of gray really reinforces that way that I see life when I'm going through a major depressive episode where the world seems like it is completely void of color. Every vibrant image has been stripped away, and there is a filter, a gray filter over it. So, gray November. November, of course, being in the midst of the autumnal season leading up to December, which is the season of winter being the season of death, and then autumn leading up to that. Then the second line, I've been down since July. To me, that feels like the ongoing struggle that even during the brighter summer months, or in a more figurative way, even when I am not experiencing an episode of major depression, it's always hovering there. It's always under the surface, whether it's coming out in obvious ways or not. It is something that lingers, something that I'm constantly aware of, even when I have, so to call it, good days. Um, Motion capture put me in a bad light. So that reminds me of the way that my mind keeps replaying all of my mistakes, all of my worst moments, that internal voice that is making me feel even worse about myself, feeding me the lies that I'm worthless, I'm pointless, life is pointless. And so that's all I can see when I'm in that state of major depression. I replay my footsteps on each stepping stone, trying to find the one where I went wrong. So I start looking back when I get into a depressive state. I start looking at things I could have done differently, or what I might have been able to do to keep from having this diagnosis of major depressive disorder. When the logical part of me is in control, I know that there is nothing that I could have done, that this is a medical condition like diabetes or heart disease. This is something that happens in my brain, and it is not my fault, which is not to say that there aren't things I can do to cope with it. But when it comes down to the fault, there's no fault with me. But that is something that if you are familiar with depression, you know that your mind will tell you that everything is your fault, and you feel hopeless to be able to do anything about it. So that's what I think of when she sings motion capture put me in a bad light. I replay my footsteps on each stepping stone, trying to find the one where I went wrong. So there I want to talk first of all about some poetic devices. I replay my footsteps on each stepping stone. So there we have alliteration where you have that same consonant sound at the beginning of the words stepping and stone. So that is bringing to the forefront this idea of every step she takes, right? I replay my footsteps on each stepping stone. You can visualize that going back every little moment, right? Each step you took, what could you have done differently? Trying to find the one where I went wrong. So again, there we have examples of alliteration with where went wrong. So that reinforcing, once again, like I mentioned a moment ago, trying to find out where I went wrong. What did I do to cause, my depression, which is not logical. You can't, it's there, right? It's there. Writing letters addressed to the fire. So to me, I see this idea of writing letters addressed to the fire. I have all of these things I want to say to other people to try to express what I'm feeling, to reach out for support. I think of the things I could say. I think, hey, I could call this person and I could say this, but then I don't, because when I get in a depressive state, I know I should reach out, but I just don't feel that I have the physical or mental capability of doing so. So I have all these things that I want to say and do, but I don't. So it is like writing letters and tossing them into the fire. And I was catching my breath, staring out an open window, catching my death. So the line, and I was catching my breath, to me, again goes back to the idea I'm thinking of reaching out. I'm like, and it's a scary thought. It scares me to think about reaching out because what if I can't properly explain what I'm feeling? What if the person I tell doesn't understand? What if I share my feelings and I am put back in inpatient psychiatric care? Which, if I needed to be, then I would have to accept that and be okay with it because it literally saved my life in 2017. But it's not something I really want to have to do again. But so there are a lot of things that make me kind of catch my breath when I think about sharing. Catching my breath, staring out an open window. This image, this idea of watching out the window, the open window where I can see people going about their lives around me. I can see the world continues to move on day in, day out, people doing things that they would do, having fun, and I see that, but I'm away from it. There's a window that separates me from the world. Even if I am being active and participating in activities with people I love, when I'm in a depressive state, especially if I'm dealing with dissociation, I feel like I am standing there alone. Even when everybody's around me, everybody is talking, everybody's laughing, but I can't quite experience that. I am looking longingly out a window, wanting to be like everyone else, catching my death. Now, this is again trigger warning. I'm going to talk again about suicide, catching my death. That to me is when I feel like everything is futile. And I feel like all I'm ever going to be able to do is to watch everybody else, and that I'm never going to be able to participate in life the way that everybody else does and the way that I want to. And when the pain gets almost too burdensome to bear and I can't find that light, I can't find that hope, then I think about catching my death. Um, and don't worry about me. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say you can worry about me if you want to, but I do. And I feel that intensely, suicidal thoughts come into my head again. I have several coping mechanisms. I have coping skills. I have my husband I can reach out to. I have family. I have friends. I have a therapist and I have a psychiatrist. So I'm doing those things to make sure that I am getting the support that I need. But even with all of that support, I still have these thoughts and feelings. And I couldn't be sure. I had a feeling so peculiar that this pain would be for evermore. Again, that goes back to the way that I feel at times, that my depressive episode, the very intense episodes that I undergo sometimes, that it's never going to end, that I'm always going to feel just that low. Now, in my case, and I can't speak for anyone else, but my case, I certainly believe that major depressive disorder is a condition that I will have for life. I fully believe that I will continue to need medication and regular appointments, of course, with my psychiatrist to get that medication, and regular appointments with my therapist so that I can talk and work through things. With that being said, however, not every moment is the lowest of the lows. But when I am in the lowest of the lows, this is how I feel. I had a feeling so peculiar that this pain would be for evermore. And then now we go into that second verse or stanza. Hey, December. So at the beginning, we have gray November, where fall is here, the middle of fall, like I talked about, the season that precedes the season of winter or death. Hey, December. Guess I'm feeling unmoored. Nothing holding me to earth. That's how I feel at times. This idea of everything is bleak, everything is dark, it's cold. I'm feeling unmoored. I feel like there's no solid ground I can stand on. Now, I briefly want to talk about something that is causing situational depression for me right now, in addition to my actual diagnosis of major depressive disorder. If you follow my channel, then you know that my mother is in end stage Parkinson's and is currently on hospice, and we don't have much time left. And the time that we do have, unfortunately, end stage Parkinson's causes physical and mental incapacity. My mother has very few to no lucid moments given, any given day. So I am facing that, and that is also making me feel unmoored. I've always been close to my mom. She's a wonderful mom. She was my best friend. And now I feel like I don't have that solid ground, right? That foundation of my mother. So I feel unmoored from that. I literally have days where spend, I should say, a lot of time walking around my house aimlessly, feeling unmoored, thinking, oh, I need to pick up the phone and call my mom. And I can't do that anymore. So that makes me feel unmoored. Then the next couple of lines, can't remember what I used to fight for. So again, I want to talk about fight for with alliteration. And this is emphasizing that there used to be something I felt like I could fight for, something I felt like I should fight for. But in the worst of times, I feel like it's like I have no reason to fight anymore. And while the logical side of me knows that isn't true, the emotional and the, depressive side of my brain is telling me there's nothing worth fighting for. You have nothing. And so I feel like at that time that it is pointless for me to fight and to continue trying. And again, like I said, if I feel this way, I do reach out with those skills and the professional and the personal help that I need. I rewind the tape, but all it does is pause. On the very moment, all was lost. Again, this idea of looking back and recalling my lowest mental state, where I felt like I lost everything. I almost lost my life because I almost took my life. And I possibly would have been able to do so if my spouse hadn't happened to come home early from work that evening and get me to an ER in time. And then I spent a week in inpatient care. And so sometimes I think about that and I feel guilt for what I put my husband through, for what I put my children through, my extended family, my friends. And that is absolutely not fair to myself to place that guilt. But at times I do. And then I have to work through that again and say, no, you were sick. You had a medical condition. You still have it. You're learning to live with it, but you had to get help. And there should not be any guilt. But again, if I'm just rewinding that tape and thinking of what I perceive as a depressed person as failures, then sometimes that's all I can think about. Sending signals to be double crossed. So again, alliteration with sending signals. And this idea of the signals being double crossed goes back to what I just mentioned, that when I'm in a depressive state, my brain is only sending me my worst moments. And it is casting my best moments also in a negative light. And not that I would consider necessarily my best moment when I entered inpatient care, but through another lens, that was my best moment because that's when I got an official diagnosis. That's when I got help. So, this casting signals to be double crossed, my depressive brain is double crossing me, right? Trying to tell me that that was a bad or low moment when in fact it was the moment in which I began to get better. And I was catching my breath. So again, this longing to reach out, but my depression not allowing it or catching my breath. Also, I think about on the flip side this time, this catching my breath is the idea of that was not my fault. That was not my lowest point when I entered inpatient care. That was a moment to celebrate, a moment where I did, even though maybe I didn't want to reach out, my spouse helped me reach out to get that help. So I'm catching my breath, being like, you're wrong, telling my brain, you're wrong, you depressive side of me. That was not something I should feel guilty about. That's something that was hopeful. Barefoot in the wildest winter, catching my death. So again, this imagery of winter, the cold, the dark, wild. You feel tossed out. You don't feel grounded. You don't feel safe. It's wild. You're barefoot. You have no protection. You're walking alone. And that is, to me, this feeling I get of being isolated and my thoughts being jumbled up. If you know have depression, you know that not only are you dealing with sadness, that is part of it. Yes, it's a deeper level than just, oh, you're kind of, on the surface sadness, but there is a deep level of sadness. But that is not the only part of depression. There's also the lack of focus, difficulty in concentration, thoughts being scattered or all over the place. So I think about that when she sings Wildest Winter, because I can't, on certain days, I can't honestly focus on much of anything at all. And it feels like I'm alone. I'm barefoot. There's nothing, protecting me. My thoughts are not even protecting me. They're, matter of fact, a lot of times my thoughts work against me. And I feel very confused and very much like I'm just out wandering the cold, dark wilderness alone and not able to find my way. I'm lost in the wilderness. Catching my death, again, that same idea of contemplating, my own death. And I couldn't be sure. I had a feeling so peculiar that this pain would be for evermore. Evermore. So there's two repetitions there, evermore and evermore, again, reinforcing the belief or the feeling that is intensely overwhelming that the current state of depression that I'm in when I'm feeling this way is going to remain forever, and there will be no reprieve for me. Then in the song, you have Bon Iver's part coming in. Can't not think of all the cost and the things that will be lost. So I know it's a different meaning for Taylor Swift, which I probably should have said this at the beginning, but I am again reflecting personally. So I'm not going to get into, her personal life or what she could be talking about. That's not my point today. My point is my very own personal experience with this song. So this idea, can't not think of all the cost and the things that will be lost. If I were to take my own life, I think about my family and my friends, what they would lose, but I also think about what I would lose if I took my own life. Because there are times where in my darkest days, I'm holding on just for other people. But then there are times I am holding on for myself. What will I lose? So I attempted in 2017. And since that time, I have gotten a master's in English. I have traveled to Chicago to present at a conference. I have presented online at virtual conferences. My daughter just got married this year. I would have missed out on a lot of things that have become very wonderful in my life, right? So there are things I would miss on because even I myself, I am worthy to stay alive for. Then the next part, oh, can we just get a pause? A break, right? Can I just get a pause? Can I get a total break from depression? What if I could just have one day without it? Not going to happen. So I have to think about this next part. To be certain will be tall again. So the dark low state will eventually give way to the light, and I will overcome that major depressive episode. I know also that when that happens, I will have eventually another one, but I have to remind myself again that I won't always be low, that I can be tall, so to speak, again. Whether be the frost or the violence of the dog days, I'm on waves out being tossed. So weather be the frost. So we have not just alliteration, we have two, words that sound the same with different meanings. So no matter what the weather is, if it's frosty, if it's the violence of the dog days, right? The heat of the summer. So all year long, whatever the case may be, I will struggle at times, but I can also be reminded that I will emerge from that state again. I'm on waves out being tossed. Is there a line that I could just go cross? Again, this idea of getting a pause or stepping over some line where, hey, I could wake up the next day and not have major depressive disorder anymore. I wish, right? And when I was shipwrecked, can't think of all the cost. I thought of you, all the things that will be lost now. So a lot of alliteration here. When was shipwrecked, the things that. So the worst you could be, right? You're shipwrecked, you're in danger of death. I thought of you, all the things that will be lost now. So to me, this makes me think of my darkest moments, right? Shipwrecked, what I fought to become and what I've overcome. and why I'm proud of myself now. Like I mentioned a moment ago, I'm shipwrecked, but I can't not think of all the costs, right? I've got to think about that. The cost of if I did choose to allow this shipwreck or this very difficult season in my life to make me make that decision, right? In the cracks of light, I dreamed of you. So this could be in that darkest moment when you're getting the little glimpses of light that we can gravitate toward in the worst times of depression. I'm thinking, yes, again, like I mentioned, of my family and my friends and my loved ones, but I'm also thinking of myself, right? Those moments of joy that I've had, those moments of accomplishing so many things that I never thought I would be able to accomplish. So those light, little semblances of light, those glimmers or rays of hope that pierce through the darkness. It was real enough, whether weather be the frost, to get me through, or the violence of the dog days. So all of the little glimmers, even if it's just one or two little glimmers, are real enough to get me through another day of pain and struggle. It's enough to keep me going. But I swear, is there a line that we could just go cross? So again, that roller coaster, right? Is there a line that we can go cross? I'm tired of being up some days and down some days and up and down. And why can't there just be a simple middle? Why am I either the tallest, soaring above everything, or shipwrecked? Why can't there be this happy medium? And again, the repetition comes, you were there. Whether that you be the people who keep you going, or that you be the you that you are at your core, that depression doesn't define you. Either way, or both. For me, as I mentioned, it's a case of both. And I was catching my breath, floors of a cabin creaking under my step. So again, with the alliteration, cabin creaking. So making those little steps, right? Floors of the cabin creaking, taking those steps towards the light, taking those steps toward a place of healing. And I couldn't be sure. I had a feeling so peculiar this pain wouldn't be forevermore. So a change from the previous two mentions, right? Where previously it was having the feeling so peculiar that the pain would be forevermore. Now we have a feeling so peculiar this pain wouldn't be forevermore. And then we get a repetition, evermore, evermore, evermore. This pain wouldn't be forevermore, evermore, evermore. So ending on that hopeful moment, holding on to the knowledge that the pain will not be forever. You will continue despite the pain. You will continue to have moments of light, moments of joy. And I find this song to be very cathartic and an ending that's very hopeful. And this song sustains me quite frequently when I am in my darkest days of depression. So I thank you for watching this poetry series. I thank you for watching today as I got in depth through the use of Evermore to discuss my major depressive disorder. I would appreciate it if you would hit the like, hit that bell, and subscribe so we can talk about lots of different things Thank you again for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.